All right, everybody, welcome to Build. Let's hear it. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri. Patton Oswalt is one of the funniest, smartest comedians in the world. He's the voice of Ratatouille, the narrator on the Goldbergs, principal on AP Bio, and he was the husband of Michelle McNamara, a phenomenal crime writer who unfortunately passed away in 2016 while in the midst of investigating a serial rapist and murderer known as the Golden State Killer. Yesterday, her incredible work was able to see the light of day. All Be Gone in the Dark was released in bookstores and Amazon and really wherever you buy books now, everywhere. And Patton Oswalt is here to talk about it with us today. Patton Oswalt, everybody.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, guys. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the book came out yesterday. It's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. It's her... I think she's been about 3.5 years, really obsessively and doggedly tracking down this story. It was gonna start off as a combination true crime book about the crimes and a memoir about her own obsession with true crime and how that started. And then near the end, she was starting to edge toward, I think maybe I Can Catch Him. The DA in. One of the DAs in the case handed the entire case file over to her. I believe it was 51 banker's boxes full of documents. And this guy was a horrifying serial killer who operated up in Sacramento in the 70s and then kind of worked his way downwards, through the 80s. 50 rapes, 10 murders, still uncaught. And she really it's a fascinating reading in that not only does she recount the crimes and how the police were following, whatever clues they could, but it's an amazing portrait of America and especially California in the 70s and 80s and how maybe some of the prevailing attitudes shaped the assumptions that the police made when they were pursuing their leads and their theories. And you really get inside the mind of the homicide cop that follows a lead and follows it and works it and then ends up running into a wall and you get the frustration of this guy fits all these things, but this one thing exonerates him and I just lost 3 months, which means the killer has a 3-month head start on my pursuit again because I followed the wrong lead. So you really get into the frustration of that.
I feel like we're kind of in the midst of this wave of true crime work, looking back on moments in time where we see that investigators' assumptions about people and about the culture were really the things that stopped the investigations from progressing to where they could have gone in a lot of ways.
Or at least hindered them. What's also very frustrating is when you look at the lives of, she gets as much into the lives of these individual investigators as she does in this basically monster, and you see that they were operating at the best of their abilities, but because of the era they were raised in and a lot of the assumptions that they had about men and women and what a sex crime is and why it happened, that did sometimes hinder that investigation. And it makes you wonder, as progressed and woke as we seem now, what are we going to look back on in 40 years and say, oh no, those assumptions also stopped us from getting this, and this done. I mean, it's an extraordinary book. So
how woke is the 53-year-old police detective in like Omaha, Nebraska?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and especially what's even more startling is you think of, 70s California. Oh, well, that's a liberal hippie mecca and people are very progressive. But, it's not as, for a few, but it's not as open-minded as you think it would be, and there are some really frustrating moments of. But there's also just that it's almost that cops. I don't want to call it cops' disease, but people that become homicide cops are wired differently than other people. They will, pursue things that other people will ignore. They will keep going after events. They will make other people just despair and give up. And there's a thing early on where Michelle is speaking to one of the cops, and she says, I know that I'm grasping at straws right now. And the guy just says, grasp a straw and work it into dust, because that's all we ever do. And that's the best you're going to get, yeah.
Do you remember the moment that she found the Golden State Killer and like started talking to you about it when she first thought of writing about it?
I mean, she was always following multiple cases. She was always investigating different cold cases. She had all kinds of Google alerts and was a member of so many different crime message boards. But there were multiple things going on at once so I can't remember a specific time when she brought this case up. And before she named him the Golden State Killer, he had this very complicated name.
She named him that.
She named him the Golden State Killer. Before then, he was called. I'm going to explain this. This is, by the way, one of the cops told her one of the reasons he is the worst uncaught serial killer in California history, worse than the Zodiac, but one of the reasons and she asked a cop this, and he goes, yeah, this is going to sound really sick, but we didn't give him a good enough name. We didn't give him a name that popped with the public and grabbed the zeitgeist. When he was up in Sacramento, he was called the East Area Rapist. Then he started migrating down south, and that's when he started murdering people, and he became ONS, the original Night Stalker, which was a misquote in a magazine article. So then it was combined into ear-ons, ear/ons, which then takes 5 minutes to explain what that acronym means, and by that time, people's attention has drifted away. So he didn't have a punchy, Night Stalker, Zodiac.
Ear-ons killer.
The ear-ons killer, which the people like, ear-on? He cuts it. No.
Leaves them on?
Ear means original East Area, and people are like, okay, I can't already. So she came up with Golden State Killer, and a couple of the homicide cops, I remember, were saying, oh, thank God you came up with that name. Because that makes it, that lands harder. That makes people remember it a little, better.
When the two of you first started dating, was she interested and engaged in true crime?
She knew a lot about true crime. She obsessively read about, again, not serial killers, but the people that would pursue them. But she always thought that, well, this is an interest and a hobby that I have. I don't know how to monetize this or make this into a career because I can't, it's too late for me to join the FBI at this point. But she was writing TV shows and screenplays, and she wrote a screenplay called G Girl, which was like a comedic. It was like Legally Blonde set in the FBI. So in researching the FBI to do this kind of frivolous comedy, she really got into true crime, and that became way more interesting. So what I said to her was like, look, if you're frustrated writing these screenplays, let's build you a website and you can start blogging about, because this was kind of it when the internet became the internet that we know now. And so she started writing about these things, and then that led to one of the cases that she wrote about was that she basically was able to get all the principals of this case out in Utah to talk to her because she's just a blogger. They're like, we'll talk to a blogger. And Dateline NBC had been trying to break this case, and none of them would talk to them. So Dateline NBC hired her as a consultant to go out and talk to these guys, and then word of that got to Los Angeles Magazine. They go, are there any other cold cases you're interested in? And this was one of them. Wrote a big article about that, and then HarperCollins came and said, hey, this is a book, expand this into a book, and then that's how that happened.
It's an incredible moment when you're with someone and you get to be the person that goes, hey, just do this. You're amazing at this. I'll help you do that. Let's do that.
Well, especially because I was seeing that she wasn't doing that thing. I had an interest in crime and serial killers, but it was more in that
who doesn't?
But looking back at us, oh my God, this guy, John Wayne Gacy and Ed Kemper and all these guys. She was more into, oh my God, do you see this seemingly random crime in this state, and then 2 counties over, a better version of this crime happened? This is this guy. He's refining his methods and getting better at what he's doing. So she could spot somebody ramping up to be a killer or something like that. And then so she didn't care about sitting around talking about somebody that was just sitting in jail and going over all the, gory details. She was about, why isn't this case solved, and why isn't this thing being stopped that is clearly starting up right now?
She wasn't greatest hits guys like we probably are.
That's what I was. I was one of those, when you're in your 20s and you want to seem more dangerous and more interesting, you're like, yeah, I know a lot about serial killers.
Who's your favorite serial killer?
No, really, yeah, literally. But she was more about who's your favorite profiler, who's your favorite criminologist, who's your favorite geographic profiler. Those were the celebrities in her mind.
Once you once Michelle got going and it became really an obsession in her life and really what she was doing, did you ever come home to find like your garage or a room sort of decked out like with a map and like tacks all over it?
Well,
and stuff?
there were times when she was like, "I need you to go take a vacation with our daughter Alice because I'm going to have to lay some open files on the floor and start, organizing things." Chronologically, and she can't be walking in the room when some of these things are laid out. And I totally understood that. So she was very careful about not leaving stuff open, but there were times when, she was like, okay, go away for a few days and, see you after this long weekend. That kind of thing.
After she passed away and she'd done all this work and she was really in the middle of the book, right? And putting together the book.
She was 2/3 done with it. And then the thing that kind of stopped her finishing it as quicker as she could was as she delved deeper and deeper into it, she was uncovering new leads that then she would call these investigators about, and then they would go have, big meetings. They had a thing that they jokingly called Swabapalooza, where they were trying to get DNA swabs from all of these guys, this like list of 50 potential suspects. They called it Swabapalooza. Where they're trying to get all the, so that
homicide detectives have a macabre sense of humor, right?
Oh, they have the most. She even describes it as a lot of the language that homicide cops will use about a suspect that they think might be the killer is almost the same stuff that you'll use when you're falling in love with somebody. Yeah. Like, oh, this guy's looking good. I'm liking this guy. I'm really excited. And then when they run into like something where they find out he has an alibi, they go, oh, he blew it. I was into him and he blew it. You know what I mean? Like it's his fault that he wasn't the killer. So it's the same way as like when you're in love with someone and then they do something that makes you go, oh, yep, got it. Nope, not happening. Right. Yeah. You just said the word modern but pronounce it modern. Yeah, we're done. We're not going out. So.
Takes me back to Simon's book, Homicide, that the TV show then ended up getting based on.
Homicide: Life on the Streets, which she loved that show. And she loved The Wire because those were the two shows where this is actually what cop work looks like. And if you notice on Homicide, they treat detective work like a form of pathology. Andre Brower's character, they go down. Remember, he doesn't know what car they have the key for. And they go, well, let's just go up and ask. He goes, no, we're going to stand on here in this garage full of cars and waste an hour because I'm going to figure out what car, because they have that compulsion. And then the John Polito character is constantly talking about the Lincoln assassination and who I'm not sure that Booth was the guy that did it. If you look at he's just going over all this stuff because they compulsively do that.
For my money, and this isn't even a question I'm wasting time right now, but for my money, one of the greatest detective scenes in any television show is The Wire with McNulty and Bunk just cursing as they find new pieces of evidence. Fuck, motherfucker.
Yeah, when they're looking at the old police report, it was done very sloppily, and then they start to recreate what actually happens in that room, and they realize, and all they say is fuck. Yeah, that's right.
One of the great scenes of any television
show. Does anyone know what it's episode 4, season 1. It's called Old Cases. One of the best scenes ever shot. I'm sorry.
I agree.
It's an amazing show, but that scene itself, you can watch it on YouTube. It's two actors, and all they're saying is the word "fuck" as they put and you can follow their thought process as to how they're figuring out. Oh no, she wasn't shot in this direction. Mm-hmm. She was shot in this direction, and now this turns everything around.
I remember the first time I saw that scene, being like, "Oh, cool," and then. Watch The Wire multiple times now, second and third viewing, you're like, that's one of the great TV scenes.
Greatest TV scenes. And then it's alluded to later in season 5 when they realize that Marlowe is hiding all the dead bodies in the vacants, and Bunk and Lester Freeman, two of the detectives, are standing next to this boarded up house, and then Lester Freeman goes, this is a tomb. We're standing in front of a tomb. And then he walks away, and then Bunk just goes, fuck, which is that because there's 19 bodies in there, not just one, and that's that he alludes back to that scene. Like he just said fuck 20 times for one dead body. How many times you have to say it for 19? Like is that kind of? It's amazing.
So after Michelle passed away, she's 2/3 of the way through the book. What did you think, or what was your job at that point? How did you go about getting this book finished?
My job was to reach out for help. I wish I could tell you that there was some kind of Hollywood scene where I'm like, damn it, I'm finishing this. I emailed her researcher, I emailed her publisher, I emailed this journalist that she knew and worked with and said, could you guys please talk with me. How do we get? I want this book to be published with her name on it. You know, this is her work. How do we structure it so that it's her narrative and make her passing part of the narrative? And there's a very tragic moment when Michelle McNamara passed away on April 21st, 2016, and it's happening right as she's putting all this new stuff together, and then it's just cut off, and it's this it lands like such a for me obviously but it lands like a body blow. It's another in these series of disappointments in this. I mean, I hate to use, and there's another thing she talks about, a real danger for homicide detectives is, especially when they're pursuing a diabolical piece of shit like this guy, you start getting into that thing, oh, see, that was really clever what he did, and you start to creep into a little bit of admiration, and then you have to go, but he's a fucking rapist ass, then you gotta like snap out of it, and so she deals with that kind of syndrome too, that a lot of homicide detectives, you have to acknowledge, if you don't acknowledge the brilliant parts, because acknowledging where he was smart will help you catch him, but that's a sick feeling to do that.
She had that a little bit when she was talking.
There were
about
moments
it
when she would talk and she would have to go, and she describes it as you'll start talking about an ex-boyfriend, and then you realize you've been talking way too long, and so you're like, but he's a piece of shit, because you don't want someone going, you still like him. Like, no. Right. But there were things that he did that they were horrifying, and then your stomach crawls because you go, oh, and that's also kind of brilliant, in an awful way. So like he would attack couples. He wouldn't just rape a woman. He would attack a married couple, and he would he'd make the husband lie face down in the kitchen and tie him up. Then he would stack plates and cups on his back and say, if I hear any of these hit the floor while I'm in the other room with your wife, I'll kill both of you. And the guy would just, sit there motionless. And there's a particularly horrifying scene where I think, he raped 50 people up in Sacramento, and the community everyone was freaking out. They were terrorized, and they had a huge public meeting, the entire city, and all the cops were answering questions and trying to reassure people. And a guy stood up and said, who I'm disgusted with is not the police, it's the men in this city that let a guy break into their house and rape their wives. If that asshole broke into my house, he'd be dead before he knew it. He and his wife were the next victims. So the guy was there in this meeting watching, and they've poured over the photograph. There's photographs of that meeting, and they haven't spotted everyone in the thing's accounted for.
I'm glad you told the second part of that really fast, because I was about to be like, fuck that guy.
No, and then it was just, it was horrifying. So, it's this level of, he was held at gunpoint by the police at one point, and he got away. They had him at gunpoint, and he slipped away. So, there is something particularly monstrous about
the
this.
Pacific Northwest was
no, this is Sacramento and then south down into Goleta, Irvine, those areas.
Right. Was Ted Bundy in those areas as well?
That was Pacific Northwest.
That was Pacific Northwest. Yeah, okay. Yeah. The West Coast in the late 70s and early 80s, really.
There are these weird spots where the Pacific Northwest, there's something up there that creates all the Green River Killer and Ted Bundy. And then there's something in Wisconsin and Illinois.
Kansas.
There's that, John Wayne Gacy and then a lot of tight urban areas, especially in the 70s with, Philadelphia, Gary Heidnick and people like that. There's every now and then there's there's a time when someone described, there's a recent book about Charles Manson described him as the wrong man he's the wrong man in the wrong place, or the wrong man at the wrong time. And that's what these guys always are. It's the wrong man at the wrong time. And they're just in that area.
So what does it feel like for you right now to be able to release this book? What did it feel like yesterday when it was on shelves and you could tell people to go buy it?
It felt really empty. I wish I could tell you something more hopeful, but I shouldn't be here talking about this book. She should be. So it very, I have to kind of steel myself to talk about this so I don't burst into tears, because I want her to be, talking about this book and talking further to homicide detectives and criminalists and maybe solving this thing. She wanted this guy caught. She didn't care about the book being a bestseller. She didn't care about her getting the credit for catching him. She goes, all I want is I want bracelets on this guy's wrist, and I want him to hear a cell door close behind him. That's what I want, you know? So that was her. So the fact that she's not, because the book was a tool to further the hunt for this guy. And I don't have the brains and expertise that she had to talk. I'm just talking in terms of selling a book. She could be up here talking about new developments. She'd be getting pings on her cell phone as she's talking to you and can tell you new stuff. And I can't. It's not my world. You know, I'm a performer trying to be an advocate for a crime fighter. And it's very, very unbalanced in that way. I'm not up to this task, so I'm just doing the best I can. But it's very, very bittersweet.
It's one of those things. Do you feel like it's a little empty because you have to remove yourself a little bit from it?
Yeah, because if I let the rage take over at the injustice of all of this, if I let my despair take over, that doesn't serve the work she was trying to do. And then it makes me feel like I'm being very clinical and cold, but this is for her. This isn't for me. You know, so I don't know how else to
Did it ever, this might be a complete non sequitur or not make any sense at all, but did it ever feel that way when you started developing your own material again and you did Annihilation, that you had to find it was a helpful way to find a little bit of distance?
Yeah, I mean, being able to go on, I have a friend named Todd Glass, great comedian, and he has this phrase, if you can mock it, you can manage it. Yeah. And so what I had to mock in this case was the despair and the nullification of life that comes when you're grieving, that I don't even want to be a part of life. I literally don't want to be alive anymore because, you know, the universe just collapsed. So if I could mock that nullification and that despair, then I can manage it and I can live again. You know, and that's how that was my. That wasn't even my aim. It was the only way I knew how to approach it. It wasn't like that was an option for me that I chose from different options. It was the one way I could move forward. So I didn't even know if it would work as comedy. You know, that made it really scary.
We have to talk a little bit about AP Bio.
Okay.
I think.
Weird segue, but yeah. All right. That's great.
There was no easy segue from exactly. Where we've been to.
Wow, grief creates a lot of despair. Now, you've got a new sitcom, I hear. It's a bit of a rib tickler. How about we talk about that?
It's a dark it's a darkly funny show.
It is a very dark show.
We have a clip. Let's roll the clip from AP Bio and then talk about it for a second. You almost killed me. What are you doing?
So sorry. Let me show you something.
Whoa.
Where are you going? All right, everybody, let's go ahead and start to shut up now. My name's Jack Griffin, and I don't want to be here. I'm living in my dead mom's apartment while teaching advanced placement biology. I'm an award-winning philosophy scholar, but here's the deal. We're not going to do any biology in here.
Are you seriously never going to teach us biology at all?
Maybe Pablo Picasso can come in and teach driver's ed. This week, we are devoting our attention to the psychological dismantling of my academic rival, Miles Leonard. Miles happens to be British. He also happens to be adopted. So, this week, we will practice British accents. And whoever is best will call him, posing as his biological birth mother, and tell him some sort of devastating secret. Go.
The bookstore at the mall has good espresso, my lord.
Hey, not bad. What is this class?
Hey, where are you going? You can't leave these students unattended.
These kids are old enough to get pregnant. They can't be alone for 2 seconds.
That's literally the reason they shouldn't be left alone.
It's Jack, right? From Harvard?
Yeah.
Harvard Jack.
So it seems like you're enjoying yourself here?
God, no. Teaching high school in Toledo. It's terrible.
Your character in AP Bio is kind of a wuss.
What he is it's even better than a wuss. He's an authority figure with no authority. Yes. You know, so he has to dispense authority, but he knows as he's doing it that no one's going to listen to him.
He's very easily taken advantage
exactly.
of.
Well, he's also easily taken advantage of because it's his fault because he wants Jack there so badly. He's a public school principal, and he's got a Harvard professor teaching, oh my God, of course he's going to give him as much leeway as possible. So I'm almost like the manager of a band with an insane lead singer that we have to be. We he's the one making the money, so we just gotta deal with his whims and get him up on stage every day. So I kind of use that energy, and I also one of my favorite characters in a movie is especially in a comedy. Is Tim Meadows in Mean Girls as the principal in that movie, who is just this guy. Not only does he have zero authority, he has reached this Zen level of peace with how little authority he has, and his performance is so funny. So I kind of drew on that, the memory of that, how perfect he was.
Were you a fan of It's Always Sunny?
Yeah, I loved, and hopefully love It's Always Sunny because they'll do one more season.
I think they're doing 2 more.
And good. And Dennis, by the way, there was an article at crack.com about how his character Dennis is, even though it's a goofy comedy, it is actually a clinically accurate portrait of a pure psychopath. So they accidentally or purposely landed on that and nailed it. And so he's really funny. He's also a brilliant actor, period. Yeah. He's like a classically trained actor. So getting to do scenes against him is just the best.
He was here a couple weeks ago, and I'm such a fan of It's Always Sunny, but I think having watched that show for like 11 seasons, I was a little worried that when he came in, he was going to be a little like that maybe they based the character off him, but it couldn't be more wrong. He's the nicest guy.
He's the nicest guy, and also he's like I said, he's a brilliant actor. If he was anything like Dennis, he would have been beaten to death years ago because like a guy like that in real life, nobody would tolerate that. So yes, of course he's acting like a character. That is so not how he is.
You've always been a wonderful screen presence, be it your voice or be it, parts like this or in young adult. And I'm wondering if, in the midst of putting together your stand-up special and putting together Michelle's book and dealing with grief, how difficult it was to come back to projects like this that aren't sort of an all-encompassing kind of like, I can put this part of my life aside or channel it in some way.
I got to say, it was actually a relief to come back to something like this where I was in the hands of a writer like Mike O'Brien and producers like Lorne Michaels and Seth Meyers and got to bounce off of people like Glenn and like these 3 actresses here, Lyric Lewis, Jean Philippique, and Mary Sohn, where you are, so much of it was being on me at that point. After Annihilation, I was just drained and I didn't know what to do next. So it was like, I was relieved to go somewhere and be told what to do, and especially be given scripts that. Mike O'Brien is such a brilliant writer. So I'm like, I actually need to just be a part of an ensemble. It felt way more comforting than to be out there on my own. With my chest just hanging open. You can only do that for so long. So I can kind of get out of myself a little bit here, and it's a brilliant show to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question? Right here.
Hello.
Hi. Oh, wow. That's a great hat.
Thank you.
Or whatever, that looks really cool.
Thank you. It's from Ghana.
Oh, thank you.
But my question is, I was curious about the book. I wanted to know, I know that you knew the direction that your wife wanted to take with the book, but I just wanted to know, was it difficult to piece together the book since, she's not here?
Yeah, what was most difficult, that's a really good question, knowing the direction she wanted to go in, was it difficult to piece together the book? It wasn't so much that we were even piecing together the book, we were structuring it and putting it in a way that would tell, because she was telling 3 stories, the pursuit of this criminal, his effect on the homicide cops that were chasing him, and her own personal story as to why she was so obsessed with true crime. And when she was a teenager, a woman was murdered right in her neighborhood and it was never solved, and that kind of, so it kind of flips back and forth in time, and you get the cumulative effect of these. And thank God Billy Jensen, who was the journalist we work with, knew exactly how to structure that so that you, as you read the book, you experience those 3 narratives. You experience her origin story. You experience what these homicide cops felt, and then you kind of experience what the communities felt as these crimes were going on. But yeah, it was not easy, and I give Billy Jensen way more credit than I should deserve for structuring the book the way that it was. Yep.
Next question.
Hi, Patton.
Hey.
I'm a big fan and a new comedian. With the acting and the stand-up, and now you work on the book, what do any of the skills intertwine, or do you think doing stand-up helps with the acting and the book, or do you think it goes together or not?
Well, that's a really good question. They are, stand-up, acting, and writing are three very different disciplines. But it is weird how, in stand-up, just structuring the most basic joke, you have to learn how to grab someone's attention, but keep them waiting and then land something on them. And then in a macro level, if you expand that out much bigger, that is how you would structure a novel or a memoir. You'll see those little things happening. And then as you write, because I've written 2 books, and as you write your books, you realize stuff will come to you as you're writing, details that you didn't normally plan to be in it. And it'll make you look back on some of your jokes and go, could I have sprinkled even more details into what was a very simply structured joke? And then, with acting, the more you write and the more you read, the better you're able to recognize good writing. So, right now, and I think we're coming out of it, there's a bit of a cult of improv right now in comedy where we got to go off the script, man. But a lot of times, read the script first. It might actually be brilliant, and you'll look amazing if you just read what's there rather than going, well, I'm going to make this my own. Sometimes putting your fingerprints all over something makes it less funny. So if you make it a regular practice to write and to read good writing, you'll recognize good writing. And also just stand up stand up, you are up in front of people. It's all you. I mean, yes, you have advantages. You're on a higher stage. There's a light on you. Your voice is louder, but you're still very vulnerable. And in acting, you're bouncing off of people. You're all supported in a scene. And especially if you're in a scene, I've always remembered this. Bill Murray talked about training at Second City. They were trained to try to make everyone else in the scene funnier. If everyone in the scene is trying to do that, then the whole scene pops. So, like, if you go back and people go, oh my God, Bill Murray totally stole Ghostbusters. Well, he's very funny in Ghostbusters, but if you watch him and Harold and Dan Aykroyd, they're all trying to, they're setting Bill up for his lines, but then Bill is reacting to them in a way that makes what they're doing funny. They're all trying to make each other funny. That's why almost every scene in that film is memorable, because no one's trying to shut it all down and just me. Maybe you'll get one funny line, but then the scene no one remembers the scene. So they're all trying to make each other funnier, and you'll start learning that as you act. So, I mean, I think anything that you do will feed into your stand-up, and anything you do. So
You also notice, I think, a lot of times when it comes to acting good writing, that you have to do less as an actor. That good writing stands on its own.
Oh yeah, there's some episodes. There's an episode coming up. It hasn't aired yet. There's one of the students, name is Allison Ashley Arm, plays one of the students, and the episode ends with a line. She just says 2 words, and it's the brilliantly chosen 2 words, and she throws it away, and it gets the biggest. And when we did it at the table read, I've never seen a room explode like that. And then she delivers it because she was starting to realize, all I got to do is just read these 2 words, and I'm going to destroy. I don't need to put any extra spin on this, and she nails it.
There's no better lesson for how to write than having to perform writing.
Yes.
Because then...
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, one more thing.
Sorry.
The more you act, it'll affect your writing, too, because you'll see what comes out of the human skull naturally and what sounds like writing. And that's a big thing. Yeah, you're very welcome.
Next question. I think we have one more right here.
How are you?
Hi.
I was wondering, when you wrote the open letter to your wife, I think that touched and impacted a lot of people.
Oh.
How did you feel about the response to that?
I think the main thing that I was grateful for were people that contacted me that were further along in the grief process and said, oh, I know exactly where you are, and here's where I am now, and you will get to where I am. And the most important thing about that was it reminded me to talk to people that were not as far along as me. We all help each other along. And I don't want to get cheesy, but that's just a way better lesson for life in general, is look where people are, ask for advice from people that are further along, help out people that aren't as further along. And again, it goes back to the scene thing. If everyone's trying to do that, then kind of, I guess, life just kind of pops and is better for everybody. So those were the two things that I appreciated the most, were the people that were further along that helped me and that reminded me, and now you go pass this on, like help somebody. Yeah.
Patton, I want to thank you for being here. Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, is on shelves now or on Amazon.
It's everywhere. Yeah. And there's an audio book, an audio version read by Gabra Zachman that is, she does such an amazing job. And I don't want to sound, this is going to sound like a cheesy promo line. Don't listen to it at night in bed. I've had a couple of friends say, I started listening to it at night, and it was a huge mistake. Have your earbuds in, walk around in the daylight around people and listen to it, but don't be sitting in your bed with this thing playing in your ears. It's not a good idea. It just really, I mean, it really, and I know I'm going to sound biased saying this. Yes, it is my late wife's book. It's a scary fucking book. It's a beautifully written book, but it's really scary. So.
And AP Bio's on NBC Thursday. What night? Thursday.
AP Bio is on NBC's Thursday nights. Terrifying show. Do not watch it at night. Watch it in the daytime. It's horrifying. Wow. Wait a minute, I'm mixing those up. No, it's hilarious. So.
Patton Oswalt, everybody, let's hear it.
Thank you.